I'm gonna start this review differently from all other videos that I've made by stating that if you haven't bought and played this game yet, you should actually not be watching this video. To be clear, you shouldn't be watching anyone's video. You should be out there purchasing it and playing it for yourself, regardless of how small your budget is or how much you know about the Warhammer lore. I have never been interested in the Warhammer lore. I know barely anything other than the basic stuff. And this game was still such an amazing experience that I've enjoyed every millisecond of the game until the very end when the credits rolled. This is also one of those video games that is made grander the less you know about it, so please go out and play it. My video will be here when you come back, and I thank you for both watching to this point and for giving my video a try. Now for the few of you that are still here and refuse to take some random stranger's word, here's me gushing for the next 10-15 minutes explaining to you why this game is so brutally awesome. This game is set 200 years after the event of the first game. We start the game as a member of the Death Watch Squad, an elite group composed of veteran Space Marine soldiers that serve the Order Xenox of the Imperial Inquisition. They're considered to be the best of the best and therefore sent to any location where the Inquisition needs some extra firepower. In this case, we are summoned to the planet of Kadaku. It's the newest victim of the Tyranid hive mind, whose sole purpose is to absorb all living matter, essentially destroying worlds while accelerating their own rapid reproduction and evolution. In other words, their strength comes from their numbers and ease of adaptation to any landscape, which is made clear from the very minute in the game. Your crew gets attacked mid-air, and in that moment of chaos, you get sent flying overboard towards the solid ground. Obviously, there wouldn't be a video game if you died then and there, so we do survive and are immediately impressed by the artistic prowess that the devs are able to show. This has to be one of the most beautiful games that I've ever had the pleasure to see or play. Minor fauna elements like grass and leaves look so damn real that it feels as if you're actually there. The color palette is rich and vibrant, which is only complemented by the masterful lighting. Hell, I was so impressed by the graphics that I couldn't stop myself from taking a break just to admire the water physics. Like, look at it! It looks like real water. Like, what the fuck? Like, I think it sets a new level for graphical fidelity. There's so many moments where me and my brother stop playing just to look at the scenery. Everything from your base to the facilities to the cutscenes, it all looks so real. It's made even more intense when you realize that I encountered zero performance issues when playing it on PS5. The game never had any frame drops, pop-ins, graphical or audio glitches, you name it. This game's release really sends the middle finger to all other AAA companies, and best yet, when you get to the end of the first mission, you have to stand your ground and wait for the system to reboot, and that's when you get your first glimpse at the swarm. Holy shit, that looks so fucking awesome! For context, Saber Interactive was able to use the swarm technology from the World War Z game and updated it, meaning that they were able to have hundreds of enemies on screen without crashing the whole system. This game also shares the same director, meaning that on top of having an experienced leader with this kind of epic battle sequences, he also knows how to place the brutalities of war front and center, and man, is this game so fucking satisfying! If you've seen my Dead Space vs. Callisto Protocol retrospective, you would be aware that I'm a big fan of gore in video games. It's one of the main aspects that made Callisto memorable for me. It was so satisfying seeing Jacob break his enemies into pieces with his electrical baton, or seeing him get dismembered by the enemies in the game. However, Space Marine 2 makes that game's gore complexity look like a working concept. Every direct hit that you have on the enemy has some body parts flying around you, tainting the battlefield on a semi-permanent basis. It means that the genocide that you'll commit during every battle stays around long enough that it'll start piling up as you go. Constantly, you'll be seeing gushes of blood flying all around you, and once you get your other two teammates, it gets intense. Like, really intense. What makes it even better is that every weapon has multiple executions, meaning that there's enough variety that if you do decide to play with the same weapon for a long time, it won't feel as repetitive as it is in the original game. Plus, when you factor in the haptic feedback from the controller, you get the sense that you're the one actually grinding the Xenotype creatures to submission. It genuinely feels amazing, no matter the weapon that you decide to wield, from which there's a healthy variety. For example, you have 4 sets of melee weapons, which all of them feeling distinct from one another. My favorite was the iconic chainsword, which hits hard, has a wide range, but compensates by being slower to maneuver, especially when compared to my brother's favorite melee weapon, the combat knife. It's fast and agile, but does less damage overall and has a lower area of effect. For the gun section, you have 2 categories. You get to choose between 3 guns for your sidearm and another 12 for the main. Each feels unique enough that you'll be able to test them all out and determine your preference without making some harder to master. The point of the combat is to look epic at every step of the way, so all guns control in similar enough ways that the learning curve is pretty small. Parrying, which is represented by the blue highlight, is extremely generous and equally satisfying to watch. Melee weapons serve to clear the surrounding area and to chip out the health of the bigger enemies around you, getting rapidly to that vulnerable state which lets you get up and close and personal with them. This also heals 2 bars of armor, the armor being represented by the 3 small bars under the health. They act as your shields and therefore either generate after battle or during an execution. With this many enemies on screen at all times, you are forced to be strategic and make sure that you keep those up if you want to survive the battle, which leads to the second best thing that the game nails. Regardless of the fact that you're playing as a powerhouse, this game can get really hard at a moment's notice. We were playing on normal difficulty and, for most of it, it felt like a breeze to play. After a certain point, you get used to how the enemies behave and you get accustomed to the dance that defines the combat. However, on key moments caused by the narrative, the difficulty ramps up and man does to get your adrenaline pumping. Take the end segment of the second mission for example. For reasons that I won't spoil, you have to protect a few antennas from the Tyranids. The problem is that you need a few cartridges to clear the enemies attacking it, and while you're doing so, you're being attacked by an endless wave of enemies. You'll have to spontaneously decide between clearing the objective while taking damage or doing the opposite and risk the success of the mission in the long term. Honestly, there's so many things I still haven't talked about, like how the enemy and ally AI is so well programmed and how the music ups the battle sequences, but I'll end it with this. I recently purchased the original Space Marine on the 360 so that I can get myself ready for this game. With it fresh in my mind, I was able to make comparisons between both along the way, and 2 things really stuck out to me. The first one being that the original held up really well considering that it got released 13 years ago. Some things like the enemy AI and the simplicity of combat didn't age well, but that doesn't stop it from being enjoyable and memorable. The second and most noticeable in my opinion was just how much the second game felt like a masterfully done remake. Both games start with a computer briefing you just before we meet our squad. We then end up flying through the air and landing straight into combat. The second mission feels like a remake of the first mission in the original, where you have to reach some human soldiers and provide reinforcements. In that same mission, you have to protect a huge cannon and plant a bomb on a rocket, which represents both starting missions in the second game. Combat-wise, weapons are displayed by a pyramid-like structure. Map layout is composed of linear corridors that lead to a wider room, upping the difficulty while testing the player at every step of the way. Combat itself shows the same structure, and both build memorable set pieces through the player interaction. What's also ironic is that they also share the same 2 negatives that I have, with the first one being related to the story. In both cases, the game takes for granted that the player knows who these factions and characters are, which, in our case, couldn't be further from the truth. For this review, I had to watch some YouTube videos and read a few pages from the Warhammer 40k wiki just to explain what the Death Watch is, who the Tyranids are, and what happened to Titus in between both games. The second game in particular has the habit of throwing you into the action and letting the visuals explain the story. Don't get me wrong though, I adore that and I think it's a skill that is hard to master. However, for us, it wasn't nearly enough to get the job done. My brother knew who the Space Marines were by name and that's about it. He didn't know much else, but he still wanted to play the game just to experience the carnage firsthand. We would have therefore liked some dialogue briefing us, or to the very least, some form of codex that could bring us up to speed with current events. The other negative we have adds to the previous point, which is that we would have liked more dialogue exchanges, not just in between missions, but during the downtime between combat sequences. It's definitely lacking character development during missions, and even if I know that Space Marines aren't the talkative type, it would have humanized the characters in a more relatable way, making the fighting more personal personal as a result. But honestly, those aren't really complaints because the story does get more interesting before you get along, and anyways, you're gonna rip and tear some Tyranids, and that's what this game does excellently. That's why I bought this game on release, and that's also why I feel like I've gotten more than what I paid for. This game is a testament to the legacy of the franchise, and it shows you just how impactful games can be when you let competent developers make their passion project. It also shows that the better the game is on release, the more critically acclaimed it will be, which in turn will translate into sales. I'm so sick and tired of talented devs getting shafted by incompetent leadership. I don't know if you're aware, but Saber Interactive was sold by Embracer in March of this year for $246 million to a company called Beacon Interactive. Embracer became a dumpster fire since its deal in Saudi Arabia fell through, so seeing the company survive the closures and drama only to release a game that will live on in the collective consciousness like the Tyranids is an incredible feat. They deserve all the acclaim, and I hope that you'll be joining the 2 million people who are already playing it. It's an incredible experience from start to finish, and I hope that you will check it out in the near future, regardless of the console that you buy it on. And with that, thank you for watching the video. I hope you liked it. Do let me know if you played it already, what your thoughts are, or if you're actually planning on getting it. Quick update, I'm still working on Hogwarts Legacy. I have written 68 pages, and my brother is currently going through correcting them. He has corrected, I think, 13. So if everything goes well, I still have another 15 pages to write, and then I'll be able to work on the video. Thank you for your patience, and if you want to see that video, do like and subscribe, that typical shtick. It really means a lot to me, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you very much, everybody, and rip and tear!